Hey guys, tonight we're slipping beneath the clouds of Olympus into the myth-shrouded lands where even the gods can't escape the weight of their own hearts. You can almost taste the chill mist as it clings to the marble columns and drips from the laurels that crown the slopes of Mount Olympus. And here's a little secret: you probably won't survive this journey with your nerves fully intact. Hades himself is waiting in the shadows, and he's not the sort of host who cares for your comfort. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I'd love to see how far this story travels. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along a narrow path winding around the base of Olympus, the air so thick with silence. It feels like it's pressing against your skin. No songs of birds or the clatter of goat herders this dawn, just the hush of a world holding its breath. Morning light seeps through the swirling fog like honey dripping into cold milk, slow and golden, but failing to warm the marble steps of the mountain's high courts. Up there, gods are said to bicker and boast, but tonight, all is eerily quiet. You catch the faintest tremor beneath your feet, as if the mountain itself is shifting in its sleep. Historians still argue whether these tiny quakes were seen by the ancients as signs of the gods' moods, or just the natural grumbles of an old mountain. Either way, you can't help but imagine the ground's heartbeat echoing your own. Hades stands in the mist, not at the summit where his brothers trade thunder and gossip, but here in the murky in-between. His eyes flicker like embers, ancient and patient. His cloak billows around him, woven from the same shadows that pool at your feet. You can almost see your breath in the cold morning air, each exhale a smoky offering to the silent god who watches without blinking. He doesn't move, but the world seems to tilt around him. Even the birds that dared to sing before dawn have fled deeper into the woods, and the only sound is the faint drip of dew from leaf to soil. It's said Hades rarely left his realm, preferring the stillness of the underworld to the bright tumult of Olympus. But on this day he has chosen to emerge, if only to witness the world that forgets him so easily. The smell of wet earth mingles with the scent of ancient stone, a perfume of old places that mortals have long stopped noticing. You take a careful step forward, feeling the grit of centuries beneath your feet. Somewhere in the haze, a shepherd's bell clinks a lonely echo of a world that barely believes in the gods anymore. Hades doesn't seem to care. He's seen centuries rise and fall like the tide, each one erasing a little more of his name from mortal lips. Your gaze follows the slow swirl of mist curling around Hades' feet. There's a story from the Hellenistic period that priests would sprinkle poppy seeds at his altars to lull themselves into the underworld's embrace, a fringe ritual few dared to speak of aloud. You wonder if the scent of poppies still drifts through these woods, a secret offering to the god who sees all things pass. A rustle in the laurel grove startles you. A fox red as a spark darts from the shadows and vanishes before you can even blink. Hades' eyes flick in that direction, a faint smile twitching at the corner of his mouth. It's the kind of smile you see in old mosaics, knowing, patient and just a little bit sad. The dawn grows brighter, but the light seems to slip right past Hades, like he's a shadow, given shape rather than a man of flesh and bone. You feel the weight of his presence in your lungs, in the hollow of your bones. This is no mortal king playing at divinity. This is the lord of the underworld. And even in this half-light of Olympus's foot, his silence is louder than any of Zeus' thunderbolts. A cool breeze brushes against your skin, and for a moment you're not sure if it's the mountain's breath or the sigh of the dead who cling to Hades' heels. There are tales of those who claim to see spirits in the mist, wispy shapes that flit between the trees, caught between the world of the living and the dark realm below. Whether it's true or just a trick of your overactive mind doesn't matter. Right now you're certain you're not alone. Hades tilts his head, his gaze distant. You can almost hear his thoughts, echoes of 1,000 prayers, 1,000 curses whispered by mortals who never realize he's listening. The world might forget him, but he never forgets them. That's the burden he carries, the quiet ache that flickers behind his gaze. A trickle of water cuts across the path, a tiny stream reflecting the dawn like a shard of bronze. Hades pauses, his foot hovering above the water's edge. In myth, rivers are more than just water. They're thresholds, places where worlds overlap. You watch as he steps lightly over the stream, a single drop clinging to his heel like a tear that refuses to fall. The mountain above remains silent, the marble halls of the gods hidden in the drifting mist. But you know this is just the beginning. The day is still young, and Hades has much yet to witness, much yet to remember. His silence is a promise, an unspoken vow that the world will learn, if not to fear him, then at least to see him just this once. The air is heavy with that promise as Hades vanishes deeper into the shadows of the waking world, and you caught between awe and dread follow him. You follow the figure of Hades as he drifts down the winding trails that curl around the foot of Mount Olympus. He walks as though each step is measured not by mortal time, but by the slow, heavy beat of the underworld's heart. The morning light grows bolder now, slanting through the mist in beams that catch the edges of laurel leaves and turn dew into tiny sparks of fire. The earth smells fresh, almost sweet, like rain that hasn't yet fallen. Somewhere a shepherd's dog barks once and then the silence swallows it whole. Hades seems to glide over the rocky path, no stumble, no slip. His cloak whispers over the stones and you can't help but notice that wherever his feet touch the earth, the moss looks darker, richer, as though the soil itself sighs in welcome. You see it then, a flicker of something like nostalgia in Hades' eyes. It's easy to forget that he is a brother of Zeus and Poseidon, once worshipped with the same fervour, once a name spoken on every trembling lip. Historians still argue whether he was truly feared more than loved, or simply loved so deeply that mortals feared what they could not control. Hades pauses, gazing back up the mountain where Olympus rises like a sleeping giant. You can almost feel the weight of his memories pressing against the air. There was a time when he walked those halls as a brother, a ruler, a silent partner in the affairs of the world above. Now he lingers at the edges like a shadow no one sees until it swallows the light. He lifts a hand, fingers splayed as if to catch the sun's rays, and then lets them fall. The motion is small, but it speaks volumes of shared glories that turned sour of laughter, that gave way to thunder and jealousy. In that moment you understand that even a god can feel the hollow ache of distance, even if his realm is filled with endless souls. The wind picks up, carrying with it the scent of wild thyme and crushed leaves. You imagine what it must be like to stand here year after year, century after century, watching the world below change while the same old stories play out above. Hades' eyes narrow not with anger, but with the kind of resigned patience that comes from seeing too much and saying too little. A crow caws from a crooked olive tree and Hades' gaze snaps to it. In ancient lore, crows were the messengers of Apollo, but some say they also carried secrets for those who dwell in the dark. The bird flaps its wings and takes off, vanishing into the thickening mist. Hades tilts his head, listening to the echo of its flight, a faint beat that matches the echo in your own chest. You can almost hear the voices of the past whispering through the trees, tales of how Hades once sat beside Zeus when mortals rose up in prayer, their voices mingling like the smoke of sacrificial fires, and of how he withdrew step by silent step when the mortals' prayers turned to other names and other faces, leaving his shrines to crumble beneath ivy and neglect. A squirrel chitters from a low branch, its tiny claws scraping bark as it scurries for acorns. It's such a simple mortal thing, and yet it feels like the bravest noise in this hush. Hades watches it for a moment, and you swear there's a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Even here at the edge of the god's domain, life persists in small, stubborn acts. The sun creeps higher, warming the damp air just enough to make the shadows retreat. Hades doesn't flinch from the light, but he doesn't welcome it either. It's as though he carries his own darkness with him, a cloak woven from the souls he tends and the memories he can never quite let go. You take a breath, feeling the weight of the centuries pressing down. There's a story almost lost to time about how the ancient Greeks believed Hades had a throne of obsidian in his realm, carved from the bones of the earth itself, a throne for a king who ruled without envy, who claimed no mortal kingdom yet held sway over every life's end. You wonder if that's what Hades thinks of now, his silent throne, waiting far below while he watches the world he will one day reclaim piece by piece. A swirl of leaves dances across the path, and for a moment you swear you hear laughter, soft and sad like a memory that refuses to fade. Hades' gaze shifts to the trees as if he's remembering another time, another laughter that once rang out in these woods. You wonder if he's thinking of Persephone, her smile brighter than any dawn, her absence, a wound that never quite healed. He turns away from the mountain at last, his shoulders set, his face unreadable. You follow, feeling the chill of his passing settle on your skin. It's not the cold of winter, it's the cold of old grief, of a soul too burdened to break and too proud to bend. As you walk, you notice a patch of wildflowers pushing through the rocks, white as moonlight, delicate as breath. You remember how in some myths, these flowers were said to grow wherever Hades set his foot, each bloom a silent testament to the god who brings both end and renewal, a reminder that even in his shadow life clings to possibility. The path curves down deeper into the woods where the trees grow older and the air grows still. You feel the hush settle again, as if the world is holding its breath in deference to the silent brother who walks among them. And though he says nothing, you feel the pulse of his thoughts in the air around you, regret, resolve, and the unshakable weight of what it means to be the god of shadows. The world above may be bright and noisy, but down here beneath the ancient boughs and the watchful gaze of the forgotten god, the truth lingers like mist even gods can feel alone. And today, as Hades watches the sun climb higher and the world go on without him, that loneliness hangs heavy as a shroud. You follow Hades as he descends, slipping deeper into the embrace of the forest at the mountain's feet. The air grows cooler, the shadows thicker, as if each step down the winding path is also a step away from the sunlit world above. Hades doesn't look back. His gaze is fixed on some invisible point in the distance where the mortal world breathes and trembles without ever knowing how close it stands to the realm of the dead. The earth beneath your feet shifts from rocky trail to soft loam, the scent of pine and ancient leaf litter filling your nose. Each footstep is muffled like the world itself is conspiring to hide your presence. The only sound is the slow whisper of the wind in the branches overhead, a lullaby for a god who never truly sleeps. Hades' cloak, dark as the spaces between stars, seems to drink in the dawn's light. You wonder if he feels it, the thin line of warmth that the sun casts on the world, the flicker of life in every breath of the forest. Or if, like the rivers of the underworld, he is content to watch it all pass by, never part of it, never truly touched by the light. You've heard tales of mortals who claim to see Hades in the mortal realm, always at twilight or in the half-light of dawn. Historians still argue whether these stories were meant to soothe or to frighten. Was Hades a reminder that death is patient, or a comfort that even death walks the same earth as the living? Watching him now, you suspect it's little of both. A deer startles ahead, its white tail a flash of panic in the shadows. Hades pauses, his eyes softening. You realize that he doesn't chase, doesn't intrude. He simply watches, a witness to the small lives that flit through the world. It's a kind of mercy, you think, a kind of dignity. As you walk, the slope levels out into a hollow where the air feels ancient. Gnarled oaks stand like sentinels, their roots clutching the earth with a tenacity that speaks of centuries. A small clearing opens, lit by the faintest glow of dawn, and here Hades pauses. He stands at the edge of a ring of stones, old weathered and half buried in moss. Mortals would call it a fairy circle or a place of spirits, but Hades, he knows better. These are the silent altars of those who remember those who still whisper prayers to the dark god when the world's noise grows too much. You can almost hear the echoes of those prayers in the hush. A mother's plea for her lost child, a soldier's last whisper before battle, a healer's desperate bargain for her patient's life. Some still burn offerings at these hidden shrines, barley and honey oil and wine, trusting that the god of shadows might still hear. A curious tidbit really in some of the more remote villages of Greece. Even today they still pour out libations to Hades when the harvest ends a toast to the quiet that follows the scythe. Hades steps closer to the stones. His fingers brush the moss, and for a moment you see something like tenderness in the gesture. He kneels just once, touching the earth, as if to remind it and himself that he still belongs here too. In the hush of the woods his presence feels almost gentle. Then he stands and the moment passes. The woods hold their breath as he turns away, moving deeper into the shadows. You follow your own steps, hushed your own breath, caught on the edge of wonder. The path narrows, hemmed in by ancient yews that twist like the thoughts of the dead. Here the world feels closer to the underworld, darker, colder, the light filtered through 1,000 layers of green. You feel a prickle at the back of your neck, the sense that you're not just following a god, but stepping into the spaces between worlds. Hades doesn't slow. His feet move with the surety of someone who has always known the way. You catch a glimmer of something in his eyes, a flicker of memory maybe, or a momentary ache. You wonder what he sees when he looks at these woods, a world of life he can never fully claim, or a realm of endings he alone understands. A small stream threads through the trees, its water clear and cold as glass. Hades stops at its bank, the gentle murmur of the current filling the silence. He kneels again, cupping the water in his hand. You remember how the ancients believed that rivers were more than just water. They were the veins of the world, carrying the breath of life and the weight of death alike. He lets the water slip through his fingers, each droplet catching the light before vanishing into the stream. You see it then, a moment of reflection, of something like grief. The stream flows on, heedless, carrying away the echoes of the god's touch. Hades rises, his face unreadable. But you sense the shift in him, the way the forest seems to lean closer, the way the air grows still as if even the wind holds its breath. You wonder if he hears the prayers of the mortals who come here to this stream, the ones who whisper their secrets to the water, hoping the god of the dead might carry them down to the river Styx. A woodpecker drums on a distant tree, a staccato heartbeat in the hush. Hades tilts his head listening, and you catch the faintest smile at the corner of his lips. It's a small thing, but in this quiet place it feels like a crack of light in the dark. You walk on the forest, closing around you once more. The mist thickens and the world feels soft and half-formed, like a dream that hasn't yet decided if it wants to be real. Hades walks ahead, his cloak a shadow that moves with a grace no mortal could match. As you step deeper into the hush, you feel the weight of the moment settle on your shoulders. Here in the shadows of Mount Olympus, you walk with a god who carries every soul, every secret, every silent prayer whispered to the dark. And though he says nothing, you understand this is the place where the world above meets the world below. And in the hush of the forest, Hades walks as both king of the dead and a silent brother watching from the shadows. You walk deeper into the ancient forest with Hades, your footfalls merging with the sigh of the wind through the towering pines. The ground here is soft, strewn with fallen needles, and the gentle decay of leaves that have seen countless seasons. Each breath tastes of resin and cool earth, a fragrance that settles into your memory like a half-remembered dream. Hades doesn't speak, but you can feel the weight of his presence in every shadow that flutters and shifts around you. It's as though the forest itself bends to accommodate him, the branches parting just enough to let him pass. You wonder if the trees remember his footsteps from centuries before, if the roots still hum with the echoes of his passing. He moves with an ease that makes the forest seem like part of him, each step measured, each pause deliberate. You catch the flicker of something like curiosity in his gaze, as if he's listening not to the wind but to the breath of the world itself. The mortals who live in the nearby villages might never see him, but they know he walks these woods. Their grandmothers tell tales of the god who listens to every whispered prayer in the hush of dawn. The deeper you go, the more the forest seems to hush itself. Even the birds quiet their songs, replaced by the faint rustle of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig beneath your feet. There's a kind of reverence here, a sense that you're standing on the threshold of something both older and kinder than the bright world above. And in that quiet Hades listens. You hear them too, the faint murmurs of mortal prayers that drift on the wind like smoke. A woman's voice, thin and cracked, begging for the safe return of her husband from a war he never wanted to fight. A farmer's whispered thanks for a harvest that defied the drought. A child's halting plea to keep the sickness away from his mother's door. Historians still argue whether these prayers were truly for Hades, or whether they were born of the mortal need to give voice to fear and hope alike. But you know in this moment that he hears them all. He doesn't answer. His realm is not one of easy promises, but he listens. And sometimes that's enough. A low stone wall emerges from the trees half buried beneath ferns and lichen. You recognize it as an old boundary marker, a relic from when these woods were carefully divided between mortal lands and the unclaimed wilds. Hades runs his fingers along the cool, rough surface, pausing to trace the faint carving of a serpent coiled in the stone. It's a symbol older than any temple, a reminder that life and death have always been intertwined, no matter how mortals try to separate them. He steps over the wall with the quiet grace of someone who's never needed permission to cross the lines mortals draw. You follow your breath, catching as you step into a grove that feels like it's been waiting for centuries. In the centre of the clearing stands a small altar, no more than a flat stone draped with faded offerings, wilted flowers, cracked pottery, a handful of coins green with age. It's humble, almost hidden by the creeping ivy, but it hums with a quiet power that makes the hairs on your arms rise. Hades approaches his hand, brushing the ivy aside to reveal the old stone beneath. You see the faint traces of ash and wax, the ghosts of candles long since burned down to nothing. Here mortals still come to leave their offerings in secret, slipping through the woods under the cover of night to light a single candle and speak their fears to the dark. He kneels, his fingers sifting through the dirt and moss. For a moment you see the weight of centuries in his eyes, the endless cycle of life and death, the prayers that echo long after the voices that spoke them have faded. You wonder what it must feel like to carry all those hopes, all those fears, and know that your silence is your only answer. A squirrel scurries across the altar, its tiny claws clicking against the stone. Hades watches it go, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. It's a moment of gentle absurdity in this quiet place, a reminder that even in the presence of death, life goes on in small, stubborn ways. You notice a cluster of mushrooms at the base of the altar, their caps pale and smooth as bone. In some old folk stories, mushrooms were said to spring up where the dead had walked, a fringe belief that made their appearance both ominous and oddly comforting. You can't help but think it's fitting these small pale sentinels at the edge of the world. Hades stands, his gaze drifting to the canopy above. The sun has climbed higher, But here in the grove, the light is filtered through 1,000 green veils, soft and cool. You see the faintest shimmer of tears in his eyes, and you realize it's not for himself he weeps, but for the mortals who will never know how closely he walks beside them. A breeze stirs the leaves, and you hear a faint melody, a snatch of song that seems to rise from the earth itself. You can't tell if it's real or just the echo of your own thoughts, but it wraps around you like a promise. In that moment, you understand Hades is not just the keeper of the dead. He is the witness of every life that ends, and the quiet guardian of every hope that tries to bloom in the shadows. You walk on your footsteps, light on the mossy earth. The forest closes in around you once more, but the air feels warmer now, as though the earth itself is sighing in relief. And Hades, with his dark cloak and his patient silence, walks at the edge of the world where light and shadow meet. You follow Hades along the winding trail, the forest shifting around you like a living tapestry. The path dips and rises, weaving between gnarled oaks and ancient cypress trees that lean close, as if to share secrets in the hush. The air grows thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, a promise of mortals nearby. Soon the soft glow of firelight flickers through the underbrush, and you catch the faint scent of barley and honey burning on the breeze. Hades slows his head, turning toward the glow, with a stillness that seems to gather the shadows closer around him. You feel your pulse quicken, though you're not sure why. Perhaps it's the knowledge that you're stepping into a place where fear and faith dance together, and the gods walk hidden. The clearing ahead is small, no more than a ring of stones where mortals gather in the deep hours of night. A group of peasants stands around a fire, their faces drawn and weary, their hands busy with the careful rituals of an offering. You watch as they sprinkle barley into the flames, the grains catching and hissing as they blacken in the heat. A woman, her hair tied back with a strip of worn cloth, pours a thin stream of honey onto the stones, the golden liquid pooling and then vanishing in a hiss of steam. The flicker of the flames throws dancing shadows across their faces, each one a mask of hope and dread. You wonder how many of them know what they're truly calling to in the dark. Do they feel the eyes that watch from the shadows, the silent presence that listens but does not speak? Hades stands at the edge of the clearing, the firelight painting his face in shifting hues of gold and red. His gaze is unreadable, but you sense no judgment in it, only a deep, patient sorrow. These mortals, so small, so fierce in their devotion, have not forgotten him, not entirely. And though their offerings are simple, he accepts them in the quiet way of the old gods. One of the men steps forward, a bundle of dried herbs in his hands. He casts them onto the fire, and a sweet resinous smoke curls into the air. You remember reading how the ancients believed smoke carried prayers to the gods, a fragrant ladder reaching toward the heavens, or in this case to the silent places between. Historians still argue whether these rites were born of true worship or of fear, an uneasy truce between the living and the dead. But here in the crackle of flame and the hush of the forest, it doesn't matter. The prayers are real, and the god they're offered to stands close enough to feel their heat. The woman with the honey kneels, her forehead touching the cool earth. Her voice is low, a litany of hopes and half-remembered promises. You can't catch every word, but you hear the shape of them. Protection for her children, safe passage for her husband on the road, a quiet plea for the sickness that haunts her dreams to pass her by. Hades watches his face calm. A flicker of something passes through his eyes, a memory perhaps of another time when his name was spoken at every hearth, when temples rose in his honour and the world knew the weight of his presence. You wonder if he misses it, or if he's learned to find comfort in the quiet devotion of these small secret rites. The fire pops, sending up a brief flare of sparks. The child startles, clutching at his mother's skirt. She shushes him, her hand stroking his hair as she murmurs a prayer to the god of shadows. The boy's eyes are wide, but there's no fear in them, only the kind of solemn curiosity that children have when they're too young to know what's real and what's just a story. A curious tidbit: in some older villages they still burn a single stalk of barley at the end of every harvest, a custom so old that even the villagers can't quite remember why. Some say it's to honour Demeter, but there are those who whisper that it's also for Hades, a nod to the cycle of life and death, the unspoken promise that nothing truly ends. You feel the heat of the fire on your face, the crackle of it in your bones. The mortals begin to sing a low, mournful chant that wraps around the clearing like a blanket. The melody is simple, but it carries the weight of generations' voices rising and falling like the tide echoing the rhythm of the earth itself. Hades closes his eyes, and for a moment he seems to breathe in the music. There's a softness to his face, a fleeting glimpse of the god beneath the shadow. He doesn't sing, but his presence hums in the air around you, a silent harmony to the mortal voices. The chant fades, leaving only the hiss of the fire and the whisper of the wind in the trees. The peasants bow their heads, each one lost in their own quiet thoughts. Some eyes glisten with tears, though none of them fall. These are not tears of fear, but of something deeper, an acknowledgement of the fragile line they walk each day, the knowledge that death is never far, but neither is the hope that flickers in the dark. Hades turns away at last, his gaze lingering on the fire one final time. You follow as he steps back into the shadows, the warmth of the clearing fading behind you. The night seems to grow deeper, the hush of the forest returning to swallow your footsteps. As you leave the glow of the fire behind you, feel the weight of what you've seen settle into your bones. The world above may be loud with the clamour of life, but here in the flicker of a humble fire and the murmur of old prayers you've glimpsed something truer. Hades carries it with him, a quiet promise that even in the dark hope endures. The forest path winds on the hush, settling deeper around you as you follow Hades through the ancient trees. The firelight fades behind you, swallowed by the shadows, and the cool breath of the river finds you next, a winding silver thread that glints faintly beneath the moon's wan glow. Hades pauses at its bank and the air seems to hold its breath. You step closer, feeling the pull of the water. It's a narrow stream, barely wider than your outstretched arms, but there's something in the way it curls and twists that speaks of older things, of stories whispered by the current and secrets carried away to the sea. The surface glimmers with moonlight and drifting leaves, each swirl a small perfect mystery. Hades stands motionless, his cloak brushing the water's edge. You notice how the river seems to bend its course around him, as though it recognizes an ancient kinship. In old tales, rivers were the lifeblood of the earth veins of silver that tied mortal lands to the underworld's endless dark. Historians still argue whether the Greeks saw these streams as mere boundaries or as paths to something deeper, gateways where life and death touch hands in the murk. A chill breeze skims the water, stirring the reeds along the bank. You watch as an owl glides low, its pale wings ghostly in the moonlight. It dips once, almost touching the river's surface, then vanishes into the darkness without a sound. In some corner of your mind, a memory stirs how owls were sacred to the dead, their cries a bridge between the living and those who wait in the silent halls below. Hades' gaze follows the owl's flight, and in the quiet of the river's whisper, you see the faintest furrow of thought cross his brow. He kneels at the edge, his fingers trailing through the cool water. Ripples spread tiny waves that catch the moonlight and carry it downstream. For a moment you wonder if he's reading the river like a book, seeing the fates of mortals in every eddy and swirl. A small fish flashes silver just below the surface, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. The river doesn't pause for gods or mortals. It moves always forward, carrying dreams and fears alike. You see that Hades understands this, that he is both part of that flow and forever apart from it, a watcher at the water's edge. The reeds hiss as the wind picks up and a single reed snaps free, drifting downstream like a lost soul. Hades' eyes track its slow journey and you can almost hear his thoughts. In the underworld, rivers run deep, Styx, Acheron, Lethe, each one a boundary and a promise. But here in the mortal world the rivers still sing of life and he listens. He stands slowly, the water dripping from his fingertips like a blessing or a curse. His cloak stirs as he turns away from the river, and you feel the quiet resolve in his movements, a king who carries every soul, and yet walks always in the shadows of his brothers' thrones. You glance back at the river, the moonlight shimmering in its ripples. In some remote corners of Greece they say the rivers remember. They remember the footsteps of those who have come before the prayers whispered to the water in the dead of night. A curious tidbit, some fishermen still pour a libation into the river before they cast their nets an offering to whatever ancient spirits might be listening in the dark. The night deepens as you leave the river behind the hush growing thicker. Hades doesn't speak, but the world seems to lean in closer around him. Every rustle of leaf and sigh of wind feels like it's listening, waiting for something unspoken. You notice how the forest grows denser here, the trunks of trees pressing close, their bark dark and slick with moonlight. The path narrows to a deer track, the earth soft beneath your feet, and you have to watch your step to keep from stumbling. Hades moves with effortless grace, his footsteps as silent as the dead. A wolf's howl echoes from somewhere deeper in the woods, long and low, and the hairs on your arms lift in response. It's a sound that speaks of wild things and ancient fears, but Hades doesn't flinch. You remember how wolves were once sacred to Apollo, but in the hush of these woods they feel like they belong more to the god who walks beside you hunters in the night, guardians of hidden paths. Hades pauses, his head tilting as though listening to something you can't hear. The silence stretches out, and for a moment it feels like even the night holds its breath. Then he moves on, each step measured as if he's following a path older than the trees themselves. You catch glimpses of the moon through the branches, a pale coin hanging in the sky. It feels like a watchful eye, silver and cold, and you wonder if it sees the god who walks beneath its light. In old stories, the moon was a goddess too, a keeper of mysteries and hidden things. Tonight she is a silent witness to Hades' quiet journey. The path opens up at last into a small glade, the ground carpeted with wild thyme, and the air sweet with its scent. Hades stops in the centre, his gaze lifting to the sky. You follow his eyes and see a single star, bright and unwavering, piercing the darkness. He stands there a long moment, the shadows pooling around his feet. You feel the weight of his silence, the unspoken truth that even gods are bound by the endless cycle of life and death. In this hush, in this dark glade where mortals rarely tread, you glimpse the quiet dignity of the god who rules the underworld not as a tyrant, but as a keeper of every soul that has ever walked the earth. You watch as he lowers his gaze, his eyes meeting yours with a calm that seems to settle the night itself. He says nothing, but you understand. Here in the hush of the river's echo and the dark song of the forest, Hades has found a moment of peace. And you, mortal, though you are witness to the silent sorrow and the quiet grace of a god who never truly leaves the world behind. You leave the quiet of the river glade behind, following Hades as he moves deeper into the woods. The path twists and narrows, a tunnel of shadows and silvered leaves that seem to breathe with every slow gust of wind. You keep your eyes on Hades' broad shoulders, on the cloak that whispers over brambles and ferns, black as the spaces between stars. The hush around you is almost holy, no bird dares to sing, no branch creaks. The world itself seems to hold its breath as if to grant Hades a moment of perfect stillness. And in that hush you hear something else, a soft melody so faint you wonder if it's just your mind playing tricks. But then you see it, the memory that flickers across Hades' face. His eyes grow distant, and though he doesn't speak, you know he hears it too. The melody is not of this world, but a thread of laughter, soft and sweet, echoing from a place where the sun never fully sets. You know her name before you see her. Persephone, bringer of Spring Queen of the Dead and the song that has haunted Hades for millennia. Her laughter is a ghost in the hush, a memory that clings to the leaves like dew. You watch as Hades pauses, his shoulders tightening just slightly. Historians still argue whether Persephone went willingly to his realm or was taken in shadow, but standing here you see no hint of conquest in his eyes, only a quiet longing and ache that softens the shadows around him. The forest seems to sigh, the air sweet with the scent of wildflowers that shouldn't be blooming in this dark season. A curious tidbit, some say, that even in the heart of winter wildflowers bloom, where Persephone's memory lingers, fragile blossoms that refuse to die. And here in the hush of the woods you see tiny buds of white and gold pushing through the leaf litter, their petals trembling in the cold light. Hades' hand brushes one of the flowers and you swear it leans into his touch as though even the smallest bloom knows the weight of his love. He doesn't pick it, he only lingers a silent guardian of this fleeting beauty. A fox slinks through the underbrush, its eyes catching the moonlight in twin flashes of silver. It pauses at the edge of the clearing, watching Hades with a gaze that seems older than the forest itself. Then it turns and vanishes into the dark, a flicker of red and white against the endless green. In that moment you feel the world shift around you, the boundary between myth and truth, thinner than a spider's web. Hades steps forward, his gaze following the fox's path. You can almost see the memory in his eyes, Persephone's laughter bright as the first crocus of spring weaving through the halls of his dark kingdom. You wonder if he still hears it in the rustle of leaves, in the hush of the river, in the echo of a child's giggle on a summer morning. A night breeze stirs the trees and you catch a faint scent of pomegranate, sharp and sweet, a perfume that clings to the edges of the night. It's said that Persephone's pomegranate seeds bound her to the underworld, a taste of eternity that tied her to Hades' realm. But here in the cool air and the hush of the forest, it feels less like a curse, and more like a promise that even in the shadow of death there is life that endures. You walk on your footsteps soft on the mossy earth. Hades doesn't look back, but you sense the shift in him, the way the memories of laughter and light linger in his wake. The forest closes in, and the melody of Persephone's song fades into the hush, a half-remembered dream that never truly dies. The world seems to hold its breath as you move deeper. You notice the way the trees lean close, their branches woven together like a cathedral's vault, the moonlight filtering down in soft pale shafts. Each step feels like a prayer, each breath a fragile promise that the world above and the world below are never truly separate. You think of the stories that tell of Hades and Persephone's love, a bond that defied the cold marble of Olympus, that bloomed in the quiet spaces where even gods dared not tread. You think of the poets who sang of her laughter, of the way the world itself wakes at her touch, and how Hades waits each spring for her return like the earth waits for rain. A branch cracks beneath your foot and the sound seems to echo in the hush. Hades glances back at you, his eyes dark and calm. You feel the weight of centuries in that gaze, the quiet patience of a king who has learned that even the smallest moment can hold eternity. You walk in silence, the air around you thick with the scent of pine and the memory of flowers that bloom in the dark. You wonder if Hades feels the same pull you do, the sense that the world is balanced on a knife's edge, that every breath is a gift borrowed from the gods. The path turns and you find yourself standing at the edge of a small pool, its surface still as black glass. The moon reflects in its depths a pale coin floating in the darkness. Hades pauses at the water's edge, his cloak brushing the ground. He looks into the pool and for a moment you see a flicker of something in his eyes, a memory, a promise, a longing that even death cannot erase. He doesn't speak, but the hush around you is heavy with words unspoken. You stand there with him, the world hushed and waiting. In the reflection of the moonlit pool, you see not just the god of the dead, but the brother who loved too deeply, the husband who waits in the quiet dark for the return of spring. And you understand this is the heart of Hades, silent, patient, and unbreakable. The pool's surface ripples as a soft breeze stirs the trees above the moonlight, breaking into shifting fragments that dance across the black water. Hades stands there, unmoving, his reflection broken and reformed with each breath of wind. You watch as he studies that shifting face, the calm mask of a god who bears 1,000 titles and 1,000 memories in his silence. He steps back from the water, his cloak swirling like a wisp of night, and turns to you with a look that seems to weigh your soul. He doesn't speak, but you can almost hear the thought that echoes between you. Everything ends, and yet everything returns. You follow him into the deeper woods, the air colder now, each breath drawing mist from your lips. The forest floor is thick with roots and old leaves, and each step feels like a journey into memory itself. The world seems to narrow around you, the path more suggestion than road, as though the forest is testing your resolve to follow. Hades moves with the ease of someone who has walked this path 1,000 times, and will walk it 1,000 more. The night folds around him soft and absolute, but you feel no fear, only the quiet weight of what he carries, the prayers of mortals, the hush of the dead, the memories of a world that never stops changing. The forest opens again, a clearing where the trees stand like sentinels, their trunks silvered by the moon. Here you feel the hush deepen, as though even the wind has paused to listen. Hades stops his gaze, sweeping the clearing with a thoughtful calm. You remember how the old myth spoke of him as a ruler of secrets, how he held not just the souls of the dead, but the forgotten pacts and unspoken promises that shaped the mortal world. Historians still argue whether Hades was truly a shadowy figure or a silent force that shaped destiny itself. Standing here, you feel the weight of that debate settle into the hush, the echo of a truth too old to name. He kneels in the clearing, his fingers brushing the earth as if greeting an old friend. You see a faint shimmer in the moonlight, a circle of stones half buried in moss and shadow. An ancient altar forgotten by most, but still humming with the memory of oaths sworn and bargains struck. You can almost hear the whispers in the hush voices that echo from the deep past. A chieftain's vow to honour the dead with every harvest. A mother's promise to guide her child's spirit home. A soldier's quiet bargain for safe passage across the river of night. Each stone a testament to the mortal need to reach across the veil to find meaning in the darkness. Hades traces the stones with a reverence that speaks of old alliances and older debts. In the quiet, you remember a curious tidbit how in some places farmers still leave a loaf of bread at the edge of their fields at harvest's end, an offering for the spirits who watch in the dark. A small price for peace, a nod to the balance that even the living must respect. He stands his gaze lifting to the sky where the stars burn cold and bright. You wonder what he sees in their slow dance, if he remembers the days when mortals looked up in awe and whispered his name in the dark, or if he sees only the endless turning of the world, the brief flicker of mortal lives beneath the eternal sky. The hush deepens and you feel the air shift around you. There is power here, quiet and unspoken, a pact between the living and the dead, a promise that even the gods must heed. Hades closes his eyes, and you feel the pulse of it in the earth beneath your feet, the slow heartbeat of the world that endures even as empires rise and fall. A small shape moves at the edge of the clearing, a hedgehog nose to the ground, snuffling in the leaf litter. It pauses, sensing you, then ambles on unafraid. You watch it go and you can't help but smile at the simple, stubborn life that moves, even in the presence of death. Hades watches too, a faint, almost wistful curve to his lips. The moment passes and he turns from the clearing, his cloak stirring the leaves as he moves. You follow your steps light on the soft earth. The hush wraps around you, both a promise and a comfort, the quiet strength of a god who does not need to raise his voice to be heard. As you walk, you feel the memories of the forest pressing close whispers of mortals who once knelt in these shadows of prayers spoken in the hush of dawn and the hush of death. You feel them settle into your bones, a reminder that the world is older and wilder than any mortal story can contain. Hades pauses at the edge of the woods, his hand resting on the rough bark of an ancient oak. He seems to be listening not to you, but to the slow murmur of the earth itself. You wonder if he hears the voices of the dead, or if he simply listens to the silence, finding in it the solace that even gods crave. The moon has climbed higher now, its light silver and cold, washing the world in a gentle glow. You stand beside Hades, the hush deep around you, and in that moment you feel the quiet promise of the night that there is beauty in the shadow and strength in the silence. He steps forward once more, his cloak billowing like a piece of the night itself, and you mortal and small beneath the endless sky follow him into the deeper dark where shadows linger and the world waits patient and unafraid. The forest path fades behind you, and you step into a new kind of hush, a deeper silence that seems to settle into your bones. The moonlight is thinner here, filtered through thick branches that weave together overhead, like the ribs of an ancient cathedral. Hades moves slowly, each step measured as if the weight of his realm presses against his shoulders, even here in the mortal world. Ahead you see a figure, a lone shepherd, his cloak patched and threadbare, his face pale in the moon's cold light. His flock huddles behind him, a cluster of small dark shapes barely stirring in the hush. The shepherd's eyes are wide, his breath ragged as he clutches a simple wooden staff to his chest. You can almost taste the fear in the air, sharp and bitter like winter wind. Hades stops before him, the hush growing thick and electric. The shepherd stumbles back a step, his staff slipping in his shaking hands. You see the tremor in his knees, the way his lips part in a prayer he can't quite remember how to finish. For a moment no one speaks. The only sound is the slow, steady beat of your heart and the rustle of leaves high above. Then, in a voice no louder than a sigh, the shepherd speaks. Lord of shadows, he breathes, and the words seem to hang in the air, fragile and desperate. I beg you, protect my flock, protect my family. The sickness has come and He breaks off the words, dissolving into a shiver of breath. You feel the weight of his fear in your own chest, the way it claws at the edges of hope. Hades watches him, his face calm and unreadable, but there's something in the set of his shoulders that softens the darkness around him. Historians still argue whether mortals truly believed Hades would answer such prayers, whether they saw him as a god to be feared, or a king to be trusted in desperate times. But in this moment you see no judgment in Hades' eyes, only a quiet patience, the stillness of someone who's seen every fear and every plea that mortal hearts can hold. The shepherd drops to his knees, the staff clattering to the ground. His voice is a broken whisper, but it carries in the hush. I have nothing else to offer, he says. No gold, no harvest, only this plea, spare my children, spare them. Hades steps closer, and the air seems to shiver around him. He reaches out his hand, resting lightly on the shepherd's head. It's a simple gesture, but in that touch you see the weight of centuries, the unspoken promise that even in the shadow of death there is still a place for mercy. The shepherd bows his head, and for a moment the hush is complete. You feel it settle into your bones, the quiet that follows a prayer, the pause in the breath of the world. In that silence you understand Hades is not the bringer of sickness, nor the dealer of death. He is the keeper of what follows the witness to every final breath, and the soft sigh that comes after. A curious tidbit flickers in your mind how in some remote Greek villages shepherds still leave a single silver coin hidden in their flock's wool at night, quiet bargain with the old gods to keep the wolves and the plagues at bay. A small hope in a world that has always known the taste of fear. Hades lowers his hand, his eyes meeting the shepherd's one last time. Then he steps back his cloak, a ripple of darkness that swallows the moonlight. The shepherd shudders, his breath catching in a sob that never fully breaks. You see the tears on his cheeks glinting silver in the night. The hush lingers as Hades turns away, the weight of the moment folding around him like the night itself. You follow your steps, hush the soft rustle of leaves, the only sound. Behind you, the shepherd kneels in the dirt, his head bowed in the kind of prayer that has no words, only the fragile trembling hope that somewhere in the hush of the dark the gods still hear. The forest seems to lean in close as you walk the branches, whispering secrets you can't quite catch. You think of the shepherd's plea, of the fear that clung to every word, and you think of the way Hades listened his silence, a promise that even in the face of death there is dignity, there is patience. The path winds on the hush, growing deeper with each step. Hades' shoulders are straight, his stride unbroken, but you see the faint heaviness in the set of his jaw. He carries more than the weight of the underworld, he carries every mortal's plea, every whispered hope, every soft prayer spoken in the dark. The moonlight fades as clouds drift across the sky, the shadows thickening around you. The hush is complete now, a soft, endless silence that feels like the beating heart of the night itself. And in that hush, you feel the quiet truth of the God who walks before you, that even in the cold embrace of death there is a place for mercy, a place for hope. As you walk, you feel the weight of that truth settle into your bones, a quiet warmth in the chill of the night. Hades says nothing, but you understand the world may forget his name, but he does not forget the world. And in the hush of the woods beneath the watchful moon and the silent stars, you walk with him step by step, breath by breath, into the heart of the night. The forest gives way to a rocky slope, and you follow Hades as he steps carefully over the slick stones. Each footfall echoes softly in the hush, a quiet reminder of how even the smallest sound carries in the silence. The moon is veiled behind clouds now, and the only light comes from the faint shimmer of frost that crust the rocks, and the pale glow of Hades himself, a presence of darkness but never of oblivion. You feel the weight of the earth beneath you, the slow pulse of life that thrums through every stone. Hades walks with a surety that speaks of centuries of every hidden cave, every secret path that mortals fear to tread. The air grows colder, and you taste the bite of winter in each breath. At the foot of the slope you find a small cavern mouth half hidden behind a curtain of ivy. Hades pauses his hand, brushing the leaves aside as he steps into the dark. You follow the hush folding around you like a cloak. Inside, the air is cool and damp, the scent of earth and moss thick in your lungs. The walls are etched with faint markings, scratches in the stone that speak of prayers, and curses of names long forgotten by the world above. You run your fingers over them, feeling the grooves cut deep by hands that trembled with fear and hope alike. Hades stands still, his gaze sweeping the cavern with a solemn calm. This is not a place of worship, not a temple or an altar. It is something older, something more personal, a place where mortals come to speak the truths they dare not voice in the light of day. A place of confessions, of whispered fears and quiet despair. He kneels, his hand resting on the damp earth, and for a moment you see the flicker of every soul he has ever kept, each one a brief light in the endless dark. You realize then the weight he carries, the burden of every final breath and every quiet ending. The mortal world may not speak his name with the same reverence as they do Zeus or Athena, but here in the dark his presence is the only comfort that matters. A flicker of movement at the edge of the cavern draws your gaze. A small mouse, its fur pale in the faint glow, darts from a crack in the wall and pauses at Hades' feet. You watch as he reaches down his fingers, brushing the creature's back, with a gentleness that surprises you. In that simple touch you see the truth that even the smallest life holds weight, and even the smallest soul finds a place in the halls of the dead. Historians still argue whether Hades was seen as a punisher or as a keeper of balance. But watching him now, you know the answer: he is neither and both. He is the quiet hand that guides every soul to its rest, the silent witness to every mortal's final story. He rises his cloak, whispering over the stone. The mouse scurries away, vanishing into the dark, and Hades' eyes follow it, with a calm that seems to echo in the hush. You feel the chill of the cavern seep into your bones, but there's a comfort in it too. A reminder that even in the cold and the dark there is a place for every breath, every ending. You step closer, the hush of the cavern settling around you like a heartbeat. Hades turns to the wall, his fingers tracing the faint scratches in the stone. Names you realize, names of mortals long gone, each one a memory carved into the earth itself. You wonder if he remembers them all, if each soul he has ever kept is etched into his own heart as surely as these marks in the stone. A curious tidbit drifts through your mind: how in some villages they believed that writing a name on stone could anchor a soul, keep it from wandering in the dark. A small hope, a mortal way of giving weight to the fleeting breath of a life. Hades' hand stills and he closes his eyes. You sense the quiet grief that shimmers in the air, the unspoken promise that no soul is ever truly lost. He carries them all, the bright and the broken, the loved and the forgotten. In the hush of the cavern, you feel the weight of that promise settle over you like a benediction. You step back as he turns his eyes, meeting yours in the half-light. There is no judgment in his gaze, only a quiet understanding, a reminder that every life ends, but none end alone. The cavern seems to sigh as he steps away from the wall, the hush deepening around you. You follow him out into the night, the cold air a sharp contrast to the warmth of the earth beneath the mountain. The moon has broken through the clouds, its light soft and silver, painting the world in gentle hues of blue and white. Hades stands at the edge of the slope, his cloak billowing in the wind. You see the weight of every soul he carries in the set of his shoulders, the calm of someone who has walked every road and seen every ending. And yet in the stillness of the night you see something else too. A quiet resolve, a promise that even in the shadow of death there is dignity. You stand beside him, the hush of the night deep around you. In that silence you understand the truth of Hades, that he is not a god of endings, but a keeper of the quiet spaces in between. The world may roar with the noise of life, but here in the hush of the dark you find the calm of eternity, a breath, a pause, a promise. Hades moves on and you follow each step, a quiet echo of the truth he carries in his silence. You leave the cavern's mouth behind the hush of ancient names and mortal prayers echoing in your ears as you walk beside Hades into the cold embrace of the night. The forest floor crunches beneath your feet, frost glinting like powdered silver in the moonlight. You can almost hear the sigh of the world, turning each step a quiet reminder that even the gods move forward, always, always forward. The path curves, leading you into a grove where the air smells of wood smoke and something older, something almost sweet. You see the glow of a fire through the trees, brighter than the peasants offering fires, its light casting long shadows that flicker and dance across the gnarled trunks. Hades slows his gaze, narrowing as he watches the small circle of mortals gathered around the flames. Their faces are half hidden by hoods and the flicker of the fire, but you feel the heat of their need in the air, sharp, hungry, and tinged with fear. They're not simple peasants, these mortals. Their hands are clean, their voices low and measured. Around the fire they burn not barley or honey, but slips of parchment inscribed with strange symbols, the edges curling and blackening as the smoke twists upward. You realize this is no humble plea, this is a cult, a group of mortals who have turned their prayers into something sharper, something more desperate. You watch as they chant in a language older than the roots of the trees, their words weaving through the hush like a spell. The flames crackle, the smoke rising in a twisting column that seems to pulse with the life of its own. A fringed tidbit almost forgotten in dusty tomes, there were always those who sought to bind death to their will, to trade a promise of flesh for power beyond the grave. Hades stands still, the shadows clinging to him like a second skin. His face is calm, but you see the flicker of disappointment in the line of his jaw. These mortals do not call to him out of reverence or hope, they call to him out of fear, out of a hunger for something they cannot truly understand. The chant grows louder and you see one of the figures, a young man, his hands shaking, step forward with a small bowl of blood. He pours it into the fire, and the flames flare bright and hungry, licking at the dark like a beast that has caught the scent of prey. Historians still argue whether these cults truly believed in Hades, or whether they simply feared the darkness that lay beyond life. But here in the hush of the grove, you feel the truth settle into your bones. Hades does not bargain with those who seek to twist the natural order. He is not a god of petty power, but a keeper of the balance that mortals forget at their peril. The cult's leader raises his hands, his voice rising in a crescendo that breaks the hush. You see the strain in his eyes, the desperation that twists his features into something almost inhuman. For a moment, the fire seems to roar a wall of heat and light that pushes against the night, and then Hades steps forward. He doesn't speak. He doesn't raise his hands in wrath or judgment. He simply stands, and the hush grows deeper around him, so deep you feel it settle into your lungs, so deep the flames themselves seem to flinch. The cult leader's voice falters, the chant stumbling on his tongue. One by one, the mortals turn to face the god who watches them, their faces pale in the sudden hush. The fire sputters, the smoke curling back on itself, as if the night itself has decided it has heard enough. You see the fear in their eyes, the sudden stark realization that the power they seek to command is not theirs to hold. Hades meets each gaze in turn, his own eyes calm and unyielding. He is not wrathful, but there is no mercy in that silence, either only the quiet certainty of a king who has seen every soul's end and knows the weight of each final breath. A log in the fire cracks the sound sharp and sudden in the hush. The young man with the bowl of blood drops it, the metal ringing against the stones before it tumbles into the coals. The flames hiss a final feeble protest as they die down to a dull glow. Hades turns away his cloak, stirring the embers as he steps back into the darkness. The cultists watch him go, their faces hollow with the weight of their own fear. You see them shrink back, the hush of the grove pressing in close around them like the closing of a door. As you follow Hades away from the dying fire, you feel the world shift around you. The grove grows quiet again, the air cool and still. You wonder if the cultists will remember this night, if they will remember the lesson carved into the hush, that the dead do not serve the living's petty hunger, and that some silences are not meant to be broken. The path bends away from the grove and you walk beside Hades in the cool hush of the night. He says nothing, but you feel the calm in him, the quiet strength of a god who does not need to speak to be understood. Above you the moon rides high silver and watchful, and the stars wheel in their endless dance. You walk on each step, a soft echo in the hush, each breath a quiet promise that in the shadow of death there is a dignity that even the living's fear cannot touch. You leave the grove behind the dying glow of the cult's fire, fading like a bad dream into the darkness. Hades strides ahead of you, his silhouette a calm presence in the moonlit forest. The hush settles around you, both again thick and patient, as though the trees themselves have chosen to forget the mortal's frantic cries. The path winds down into a narrow ravine, the air damp and heavy with the scent of earth and old water. You feel the shift beneath your feet. This is a place where the world folds in on itself, where mortal prayers find echoes that outlast the voices that spoke them, At the mouth of the ravine is a cave, its entrance choked with hanging roots and dripping water. Hades pauses here, his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond. You feel the chill in the air, the way the silence deepens as you step closer. This is a place of visions, a place where the world above and the world below touch in quiet dread. Inside the walls glisten with wet stone veins of quartz catching the moonlight in fleeting sparks. The air tastes of minerals and something older, something that makes your breath come slower, your heartbeat heavy and deep. This is the birth of the Dark Oracle, the place where mortal fears become prophecy. A woman stands in the darkness, her hair tangled with leaves and her eyes wide with the weight of what she sees. She is young, but her gaze is old, older than the hush, older than the forest's whispered secrets. Her lips move in a silent litany, a prayer or a curse that you can't quite hear. She sees Hades. Her breath catches, and for a moment the air hums with something that is not fear, not reverence, but the quiet terror of knowing that the night is listening. Hades watches her with calm patience. He does not speak. He does not have to. The oracle's eyes flutter shut, and in the darkness behind her lids, you feel the shape of her visions stir like a shadow. Historians still argue whether oracles spoke the will of the gods or the fevered fears of mortals twisted by incense and the hush of hidden places. But here you see the quiet truth. The oracle speaks what the night whispers, and Hades listens because he knows that every vision is a thread in the endless tapestry he keeps. The woman begins to speak, her voice low and cracked like the hush itself. The words slip from her lips in a language older than the world above each one, a stone dropped into the deep pool of the night. Hades weeps, she says, her eyes blind to the mortal world. The Lord of the Dead carries the weight of all things, and in the darkness his tears are black as obsidian. You shiver. The hush seems to lean closer around you, the roots hanging like the fingers of the dead listening. Hades stands still, his face unreadable, but you sense the faint flicker of grief in the set of his jaw. The oracle trembles, her hands pressed to the cold stone. He walks among the living, she whispers. He sees their fears and their fragile hopes. He knows the weight of every unspoken prayer. A curious tidbit comes to mind. Some ancient texts say that oracles who saw Hades' tears went mad, their minds split by the sorrow of a god who has never been allowed to forget. Watching the woman now, you see how close she teeters to that edge. Her voice, a thin thread that threatens to snap with every word. Hades steps forward and the hush grows thick and reverent. The oracle's breath hitches her head, bowing as though she can feel the gravity of his silence pressing against her bones. Your visions are seen, Hades says, at last, his voice a low murmur that seems to shape the darkness itself. And your words will echo longer than the lives that birthed them. The woman nods, tears slipping down her cheeks. She does not speak again, but the hush of the cave holds her words like a promise, soft, eternal, and as inevitable as the turning of the earth. Hades steps back and you feel the hush ease its hold on the air. The oracle sinks to her knees, her hands pressed to the cold floor, and the darkness closes around her like a gentle shroud. As you leave the cave, the forest seems to sigh around you, the hush deeper and more knowing than before. You wonder how many other visions have been born in these shadows, how many other voices have whispered their truths into the endless night. Hades walks ahead, his steps sure and unhurried. You feel the calm in him, the patient acceptance of a god who has learned that even the wildest visions are but threads in the weave of time. The world above may rage with thunder and bright lights, but here in the hush of the earth there is only the quiet truth that everything ends and everything returns. The forest closes in again, the path winding between ancient oaks and pines. The moonlight breaks through in soft silvered beams, and you walk on beside Hades, your own breath, a quiet offering to the hush. You leave the cavern behind, the echo of the oracle's visions fading into the hush of the night. The forest seems to breathe around you, each tree, a silent witness to the quiet weight of what has been spoken. Hades walks ahead, his shoulders straight his cloak, a river of darkness that flows with the hush itself. The path rises and you see the glow of Olympus in the distance, a pale, cold light that shimmers through the mist like the glint of marble caught between the stars. The gods are awake tonight, their laughter drifting down the mountain on the sigh of the wind. It's a sound that seems at odds with the hush you carry in your bones, a bright, brittle music that rings hollow in the shadows. Hades pauses at the edge of a high ridge, his gaze fixed on the gleaming spires above. You see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightens just slightly. Historians still argue whether Hades' distance from Olympus was a choice or a punishment, whether he withdrew from the bright halls willingly or was driven by the weight of his realm. But standing here you feel the quiet truth settle around you. Hades does not belong to the bright laughter of the gods, nor does he wish to. He steps forward, the hush around him folding closer as though to shield him from the noise above. You follow the ground, cool and firm beneath your feet, the scent of pine and cold stone in the air. The laughter grows louder as you climb a bright peal that clashes with the calm of the night. You reach the edge of the clearing where the other gods gather, their faces bright in the glow of the braziers that flicker like stars against the marble steps. They laugh and jest, their voices weaving through the air in a tapestry of careless joy. You see Zeus at the centre, his eyes bright as he raises a goblet in one hand, the other resting on the hilt of his thunderbolt. Around him the gods lean, and each one caught in the orbit of his easy charm. Hades watches from the shadows, his presence a quiet contrast to the riot of light and laughter. You feel the hush settle deeper around you, the weight of it a soft armour against the bright noise of Olympus. No one sees him, or perhaps they choose not to. It doesn't matter, Hades has never needed their eyes to know his place. A curious tidbit drifts through your mind how in some older myths it was said that the gods of Olympus only remembered Hades when they needed him, when death itself touched their plans. The rest of the time they let him walk in the hush, a shadow they barely acknowledged. The gods laugh on their voices bright and brittle. You catch snippets of their talk schemes and boasts, jests and gossip that echo like hollow bells in the hush. Dionysus raises his cup in a toast to life's pleasures, and the air smells faintly of wine and crushed laurel. Apollo strums a lyre, the notes bright and quick, a melody that seems to skate over the quiet darkness that Hades carries in his wake. Hades stands still, his eyes calm as he watches. You see the faintest flicker of something in his gaze, a memory perhaps of the days when he too sat at these feasts, his voice as much a part of the laughter as any other. But those days are gone, and in their place stands the quiet dignity of a god who has learned that some laughter is too loud, too hollow to be worth chasing. Zeus glances toward the shadows where Hades stands, his eyes flicking past without pausing. You see the smallest tightening of Hades' shoulders, the only sign that the slight has been felt. But he says nothing. His silence a shield as unbreakable as the walls of his realm. Historians still argue whether this distance was rebellion or duty, whether Hades turned away from Olympus out of pride or out of a quiet understanding that his place was never in the bright halls above. Watching him now, you see the answer in the hush that clings to him. He is not a rebel. He is simply a part, and that is enough. The laughter swells, but it feels as thin as the mist that curls around the mountain. You see the small cruelties in it, the jests that cut the barbs that sting, but are brushed aside in the name of sport. The hush around Hades is a balm by contrast, a soft, patient silence that asks for nothing and gives nothing in return. A satyr stumbles from the circle of the gods, his laughter loud and slurred with wine. He sees Hades at the edge of the clearing and falters, his eyes widening in sudden sober fear. The hush grows heavy in the space between them, and the satyr bows low, his voice a nervous stammer. "My lord," he murmurs the words, a thread of smoke in the bright air. "Forgive me, I did not see." Hades says nothing. He does not move, but the hush itself seems to answer, settling like a soft hand on the satyr's shoulder, a quiet reminder that not all laughter is welcome in the shadows. The satyr stumbles back, his face pale, and you see the truth settle into the clearing. Even here in the bright clamour of Olympus, the hush that Hades carries is felt. It is the quiet weight of endings, the patient calm that stands in quiet contrast to the thunder above. Hades turns away, his cloak swirling as he steps back into the darkness. The laughter of the gods fades behind you, the hush of the night closing around you like a blessing. You walk on each step, a quiet promise that even in the clamour of bright halls there is a place for silence. And beside Hades you feel the calm that endures in the hush of the shadows, steady, patient and eternal. You walk down the slope with Hades leaving the bright laughter of Olympus behind. The hush of the forest folds around you once more, soft and watchful, the air alive with the scent of pine and the quiet murmur of hidden springs. Each step seems to draw you deeper into the shadowed heart of the world, away from the bright, brittle noise of the gods above. The path winds through an ancient grove where the moonlight filters down in slivers of silver and frost. You feel the hush settle into your bones, a slow, patient rhythm that matches the beat of your heart. Hades moves with the quiet surety of one who has never needed to hurry, his cloak brushing the mossy earth with each measured step. At the edge of the grove you see a mortal woman standing in the shadows. Her hair is dark and tangled, her eyes wide and bright in the moonlight. She wears a simple tunic, the hem damp with dew, and in her hands she clutches a bundle of wildflowers, fragile offerings to a god she has never seen. She looks up as Hades approaches, her breath catching in the cool air. For a moment neither speaks. The hush stretches out between them, a gentle weight that seems to make every breath and heartbeat sharper, clearer. You see the flicker of fear in her eyes, but there is something else too, something deeper and more ancient. A quiet wonder, a longing that she doesn't have the words to name. Hades stops before her, his gaze calm and patient. You feel the shift in the air, the way the hush leans closer around them, as though the night itself has chosen to listen. The woman's voice is soft, no louder than a sigh. "My dreams," she says, her hands trembling around the flowers. "In my dreams I see you. I see you in the shadows and you weep." Her voice trails off the hush, swallowing the rest of the words. You see the tears in her eyes, bright as the moonlight, and the way her fingers clutch the flowers like a lifeline. Historians still argue whether mortals ever truly saw the gods in dreams, or whether such visions were born of fear and hope alike. But here in the hush of the grove you see the truth shining clear in the night. The gods walk in mortal dreams as easily as they walk the earth. And sometimes those dreams are more real than the world that wakes with the dawn. Hades tilts his head, his gaze gentle. He does not speak, but you sense the quiet comfort in his silence, a promise that he does not fear her dreams, nor the tears that glisten on her cheeks. The woman lowers her eyes, her breath quick and shallow. "They say the dead walk with you," she whispers. "They say you carry their sorrows. In my dreams your tears fall like obsidian rain, and the world is still." She holds out the flowers, her hands trembling. "I brought these," she says, "not for fear, but for the hush that follows." Hades reaches out his fingers, brushing the petals. The hush grows deeper around them, the night itself holding its breath. You see the faintest flicker of warmth in his eyes, a quiet gratitude that speaks louder than any words. He takes the flowers from her, his touch as gentle as the hush that cradles them both. The woman's shoulders ease the tension, melting away like frost in the sun. She closes her eyes, her breath slow and even, and you see the peace settle into her features, a peace born not of promises, but of the quiet understanding that even in the presence of death there is room for wonder. A curious tidbit comes to mind how in some ancient texts it was said that flowers left for Hades never withered their petals, preserved by the hush of his presence. Watching him now, you believe it, the flowers seem to glow in his hand, each bloom a small perfect testament to the delicate strength of mortal hope. The woman bows her head, her hands falling to her sides. She does not speak again, but the hush itself seems to cradle her, the quiet weight of Hades' silence, a comfort deeper than any prayer. Hades steps back, his cloak swirling around his ankles as he turns to leave. The woman watches him go, her eyes bright in the moonlight. You see the faintest smile on her lips, a soft secret curve that speaks of dreams and shadows, and the quiet promise that there is beauty even in the hush of death. You follow Hades as he leaves the grove, the flowers still held lightly in his hand. The path winds on the forest, closing around you in a gentle embrace. You feel the weight of the woman's dream lingering in the hush, the memory of her voice a soft echo in the night. Hades walks on his steps, sure and steady. You see the flowers in his hand, the way they catch the moonlight in a quiet blaze of colour. And you understand these are not just flowers. They are a promise, a fragile mortal offering to a god who weeps in the shadows of Olympus, a reminder that even in the hush of the night hope blooms. The path narrows, winding down the slope in a slow, deliberate spiral. The air grows cooler, the hush deeper, as though the forest itself is holding its breath. Hades walks ahead of you, the flowers in his hand, a small bright promise against the darkness. You feel the weight of the night settle around you, each breath a quiet echo of the endless turning of the world. The forest opens into a small clearing, the moonlight pooling like silver water in the hollow between the trees. Here you see the marks of the other feet, mortal and divine alike. The hush is thick, every sound swallowed into the soft waiting dark. Hades pauses, his gaze lifted to the sky where the clouds drift past the moon. You see the tension in his shoulders, the quiet ache in the line of his jaw. The gods above still laugh, still feast in their bright halls, but here in the hush, you feel the weight of what they choose to ignore. You think of how the stories speak of Olympus as a place of shining glory, of laughter and song and endless summer days. But the truth you see now is more complicated cracks in the marble shadows behind the bright facades. Historians still argue whether the gods' quarrels and intrigues were mere stories to make them seem more human, or whether the bright halls of Olympus hid darker truths that no song could quite name. Hades stands silent, his gaze sweeping the clearing. You feel the hush draw tighter, the air itself waiting for a breath that never comes. There is no laughter here, only the quiet, patient dignity of a god who has learned that some truths are too heavy for the bright halls to hold. A low growl rumbles from the edge of the clearing, and you see the flicker of silver eyes in the shadows. A lone wolf steps forward, its fur dark as midnight, its breath steaming in the cold air. It stands still, watching Hades with an intelligence that seems to flicker like starlight in its gaze. The wolf's ears flick, and for a moment you see something ancient in its posture, a quiet respect, a recognition of the one who walks between worlds. In some old stories, wolves were said to be the guardians of the threshold creatures, who walk the edge of life and death as easily as any god. Watching the wolf and Hades regard each other in the hush, you understand that those stories hold a deeper truth. The wolf lowers its head, a gesture of deference, and then turns and vanishes into the dark. The hush closes in around the clearing again, as though the night itself has acknowledged the moment and moved on. Hades steps forward, his hand brushing the bark of a twisted oak that stands at the clearing's edge. The tree leans close, its branches heavy with moss and memory. In the hush, you hear the faint creak of old wood, the slow breath of a world that endures. He turns back to you, and for a moment you see the weight of centuries in his eyes, the endless cycle of life and death. the quiet dignity of a god who has watched it all with patient calm. The flowers in his hand are a bright whisper in the hush, a fragile thread of colour that seems to glow in the moonlight. A curious tidbit stirs in your mind how in some old myths flowers were said to be the souls of the dead, their colours a promise that even in the quiet of the earth, beauty endures. Watching Hades hold them now, you see the truth in that story, the way the hush itself seems to cradle each fragile bloom like a prayer. He steps away from the oak, his cloak brushing the ground in a soft sigh of darkness. The hush grows deeper as he moves, each step a quiet promise that even in the shadow of death there is grace. The path curves away from the clearing, winding back into the hush of the trees. You follow your breath slow, and even the scent of moss and cold air filling your lungs. The world above may be loud with laughter and thunder, but here in the hush you feel the patient calm of something older, something kinder. As you walk, you notice how the hush seems to hold echoes of every step you've taken, each breath, each heartbeat woven into the soft murmur of the night. Hades moves ahead of you, his steps unhurried, each footfall, a quiet testament to the dignity of the shadowed path. You think of the wolf's eyes, the way the forest seems to lean close around Hades, and you understand this is not the realm of fear, but of balance. A place where the living and the dead meet in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, and the hush itself is a kind of blessing. Hades pauses at a small spring that bubbles from the base of an ancient rock. He kneels, cupping the cold water in his hand. You see the faint shimmer of moonlight in the ripples, the way the hush wraps around the moment like a benediction. He drinks, and for a moment the world seems to pause, no breath. No movement, only the quiet rhythm of water and shadow. He stands the hush, settling deep around him. The flowers in his hand glow soft in the moonlight, each petal a whisper of colour in the dark. And you, mortal and small beneath the weight of the night, follow him into the deeper hush step by quiet step. You walk on the hush of the forest, thick around you like a soft blanket muffling every step and breath. The air is cool and sweet with the scent of pine and earth, and the hush seems to cradle every sound, every small movement of the world. Hades moves ahead of you, the flowers still held lightly in his hand, a quiet promise in the night. The path twists through a narrow glade, the moonlight pooling in small silver puddles at your feet. The hush is so deep here it feels as though the world itself has paused each heartbeat, a small precious echo of the endless night. You feel the weight of that hush in your bones, the quiet calm of a world that has always known how to listen. And then in the hush you hear something new, a woman's voice, soft and clear, singing a song that seems to rise from the earth itself. It's a simple melody, no more than a handful of notes, but it carries with it the weight of every dream ever dreamed in the hush of the dark. You follow the song, the path opening into a small clearing where a mortal woman stands. Her hair is dark and tangled, her eyes bright with the kind of wonder that only comes in dreams. She sings to the night, her voice weaving through the hush like a thread of silver. Hades stops at the edge of the clearing, his head tilting slightly as he listens. You see the faintest smile on his lips, the kind of quiet warmth that speaks of old memories and gentle things. In the hush, the woman's song is the only sound, a soft promise that even in the heart of darkness there is beauty that endures. The woman's song falters as she sees Hades, her breath catching in her throat. She does not run, she does not bow. She stands still, her eyes wide and unafraid, and in that moment you see the quiet courage of mortals who have learned that even the gods can be lonely. She lowers her voice, her song soft as a sigh. I dreamed of you, she says, her words no louder than the hush itself. In the shadows, in the spaces between. I saw your tears black as obsidian, and I sang to them. I sang to the hush. Historians still argue whether such dreams were the gift of the gods or the burden of mortal hearts. But here in the hush you see the truth. The dreams of mortals shape the night as surely as the stars, and the hush is a cradle for every secret hope. Hades steps forward, his gaze calm and steady. He does not speak, but you feel the quiet weight of his listening, the way the hush itself seems to lean closer around the woman's voice. She lifts her chin, her eyes bright, and sings again, soft and clear, each note a promise that even in the silence of death there is music. A curious tidbit drifts through your thoughts, how in some old myths songs were said to guide the souls of the dead across the rivers of the underworld, each note a lantern in the endless dark. Watching her now, you see how even the living can sing the hush into light. The song fades, leaving only the soft breath of the night and the slow beat of your heart. The woman lowers her eyes, her hands trembling at her sides. Hades lifts the flowers in his hand, and you see the gentle reverence in the way he offers them to her, a quiet exchange, a promise kept in the hush. She takes them, her fingers brushing his in the soft dark. Her breath shivers, a single tear slipping down her cheek. She does not wipe it away, and you see the hush itself cradle that tear like a prayer. Hades steps back, his gaze lingering on her face. You feel the quiet dignity in that moment, the unspoken understanding that even in the presence of death, there is space for kindness, for music, for the small bright things that make life worth the breath it costs. The woman holds the flowers to her chest, her head bowed. She does not speak again, but the hush around her seems to sing on the melody of her voice, lingering in the air like a blessing. Hades turns away, his steps soft on the mossy earth. The hush follows him, the quiet weight of it, a comfort and a promise. You follow too, your own breath a soft echo in the night. The path winds on the hush, deep and patient. You feel the memory of her song settle into your bones, a gentle reminder that even in the shadow places there is light enough to sing by. And beside Hades you walk on each step a quiet promise that the hush is not an end but a beginning. The hush deepens as you walk, the song of the mortal woman fading into the cool night air. The path winds gently downward, the slope gentle but insistent, drawing you closer to the realm that Hades calls home. Each step feels like a breath, each breath a soft prayer to the silence that surrounds you. Hades walks ahead, his cloak a ripple of shadow that seems to move with the hush itself. The flowers are gone now, left with the woman who sang to the night, but their memory lingers, a quiet promise of beauty even in the dark. The forest gives way to a low hill, its crest bare and white under the moon's silver gaze. You climb with Hades, the air cold and thin, the hush so deep it feels as though the world has paused to listen. At the top, the hill falls away into a shallow valley, and there in the heart of the night you hear it, the song of the dead. It begins as a whisper, a soft murmur that threads through the hush like a breath. You feel it in your bones, in the quiet spaces between each heartbeat, the soft, endless sigh of those who have gone before. It is not a lament nor a plea, it is a memory, a soft echo of every life that has ever been. Hades stands at the edge of the valley, his head bowed. The hush around him is deeper than silence, a soft cradle for the voices of the dead. You hear them too, the way their song weaves through the night, snatches of laughter, fragments of dreams, the soft murmur of regrets and hopes that have outlived their breath. Historians still argue whether the ancients truly believed the dead could speak to the living, or whether these whispers were just the echoes of grief that lingered long after the funeral fires died. But here in the hush of the valley you feel the truth the dead speak, and Hades listens. The song grows stronger as you stand beside him. It is not a chorus, not a harmony of voices, it is a river, each soul a single drop of water, each note a shimmer of memory that flows together into something deeper, something older than the world itself. A soft wind stirs the valley and you catch the scent of cold stone and old earth. The moonlight glints on the river that winds through the hollow, its dark surface, rippling with the song of the dead. You remember the rivers of the underworld, Styx Lethe Acheron, and you wonder if this river is their echo in the mortal world, a quiet reminder of the paths every soul must walk. Hades steps forward, his gaze fixed on the river. You see the quiet grief in his eyes, the patient sorrow of one who has held every soul, every story, and knows that each is precious in its own way. A curious tidbit flickers through your thoughts, how in some old texts the dead were said to gather in the quiet places of the earth, their voices rising in a soft hymn that only those who listened with their hearts could hear. Here in the hush of the valley you know that story is true. The song of the dead is not a thing of fear. It is a memory, a promise that nothing is truly lost, that every breath leaves an echo in the world. You feel that promise settle into your bones, a quiet warmth in the chill of the night. Hades closes his eyes, and for a moment you see the weight of it all, the endless cycle of life and death, the soft dignity of every ending. The hush cradles that weight soft and patient, and you understand this is the gift of the god who walks in the shadow. He carries the voices of the dead so that none are ever truly forgotten. You stand beside him, your breath a quiet echo in the hush. The song of the dead swells around you soft and endless, and in that song you hear the shape of the world, the rise and fall of empires, the laughter of children, the quiet sigh of a dying breath. All of it held in the hush, in the patient silence that Hades carries like a crown. The wind sighs and the song fades back into the hush, a quiet breath that lingers in the cool night air. Hades opens his eyes, his gaze calm and deep. He turns from the river, his steps soft on the mossy earth. You follow him down the hill, the hush wrapping around you like a gentle shroud. The world above may roar with thunder and bright lights, but here in the quiet heart of the night, you have heard the song of the dead, and you know that in the hush of the shadows every voice endures. The hush follows you as you leave the valley behind the soft echoes of the song of the dead lingering in the night air. Hades walks ahead, his steps slow and unhurried, as though the weight of every soul he carries has made him a patient traveller. The path climbed again, winding through the ancient pines, their needles whispering in the soft breath of the wind. You feel the shift in the air, the quiet promise of dusk giving way to the deeper hush of night. Each step feels like a memory, each breath a thread of connection to the world that stretches out in all directions past present and whatever lies beyond. The hush cradles it all, a soft, steady heartbeat in the darkness. At the crest of the path, the forest opens to a narrow ridge that overlooks the world below. You pause with Hades, the hush deep around you. In the distance you see the faint glow of mortal fires, the flicker of life that endures, even in the quiet watch of night. Hades stands still, his gaze fixed on the world below. You see the soft ache in his eyes, the way the hush seems to settle around his shoulders, like a cloak woven from every breath of the earth. Historians still argue whether the weight of the underworld was a burden Hades chose, or one he accepted because no other god could bear it. But watching him now, you understand it is both. He turns from the ridge and begins the slow walk down the other side, the hush folding close around him. You follow each step soft on the pine-needled earth. The path grows steeper, the rocks slick with moss, but Hades does not stumble. The hush guides him, and you let it guide you, too, each step a quiet echo of his calm. At the foot of the ridge, the trees part to reveal a narrow stream, its waters black and glassy in the moonlight. Hades kneels at the edge, his fingers brushing the cold surface. You see the way the water bends around his touch, the way the hush seems to lean closer as he dips his hand into the dark. A curious tidbit how in some ancient rites the dead were believed to cross rivers like this one, the water a soft veil that separates the breath of life from the quiet of death. Here in the hush of the night you feel that truth settle around you, like the cool breath of the stream itself. Hades stands the water dripping from his fingers and turns back toward the woods. You follow him into the hush, your breath slow, your heart steady. The world above is loud with laughter and thunder, but here in the quiet of the night each step feels like a prayer. The path twists through a grove of old yews, their trunks thick and gnarled with age. The hush grows deeper here, the air rich with the scent of earth and fallen leaves. Hades pauses, his hand resting on the rough bark of one of the trees. You see the quiet reverence in his touch, the way the hush seems to gather in the hollow spaces of the wood. He walks on his steps, careful and sure. You notice how the hush holds every small sound, the rustle of leaves, the sigh of the wind, the soft crackle of twigs beneath your feet. It is a quiet that asks nothing, and offers everything, a calm that holds the weight of the world. As you walk, you see the faint shimmer of tears in Hades' eyes. He does not hide them, he does not brush them away. They are the quiet grief of a god who has seen every ending, and still finds beauty in the breath of each new life. In the hush, those tears are a promise that even in the shadow of death there is a place for the small bright things that make the world worth the breath it costs. You walk on in silence, the hush wrapping around you like a soft, endless night. The moon rides high above and the stars wheel slowly in their patient dance. Hades moves with the calm of one who has walked this path 1,000 times and will walk it 1,000 more. You follow your own steps, a quiet echo of the promise he carries. At last you come to the edge of the forest where the trees thin and the hush opens wide. Hades stops his gaze, lifting to the sky. You see the moonlight in his eyes, the calm weight of the night in the slow, steady rise of his breath. He says nothing, but you understand this is the quiet heart of the world, the hush that holds every breath, every ending, every small bright moment of life. And in that hush there is a promise that endures, that nothing is truly lost, that even the softest breath leaves an echo in the dark. You stand beside him, the hush deep and patient around you, and in the silence you feel the quiet strength of a god, who walks in the shadow and carries every soul with gentle, patient hands. The hush thickens as the path curves deeper into the woods, the trees parting just enough to let the moon's light slip between their ancient trunks. The world seems to slow around you, every breath stretched out in the quiet calm of the night. You follow Hades as he moves forward, each step measured and certain, the hush folding closer around him like an old friend. The moon hangs high now, silver and soft, its light painting the forest in shades of blue and grey. In its pale glow you see Hades' face, calm and still, the quiet gravity of his purpose held in every line. The hush clings to him, a shroud and a crown, a promise and a burden carried in the same breath. At the crest of a small rise he pauses and you see the slope of the hill fall away into a clearing bathed in moonlight. The air here is cold and clear, the hush so deep, it seems to ring in your ears, a silence so profound it feels almost alive. Hades steps forward, his cloak stirring the frost that dusts the ground. In the hush you see the faint shimmer of his breath in the cold air, each exhale a soft ghost in the moonlight. He stands in the centre of the clearing, his head bowed, his shoulders squared, as though he carries the weight of every soul that has ever whispered his name. The hush is complete here, no sound but the slow steady beat of your own heart and the quiet sigh of the wind in the trees. The moonlight catches the silver in Hades' hair, the calm in his gaze. He does not speak, but you feel the shape of his thoughts in the hush, the quiet promise that he carries like a secret. A curious tidbit how in some old legends it was said that the moon was the silent witness to every secret ever whispered, every prayer ever spoken in the dark. Watching Hades beneath its silver gaze, you understand how true that story is. The moon sees all, and the hush remembers. Hades lifts his eyes to the sky, and you see the quiet ache there, the weight of centuries, the soft sorrow of a god who carries not just the dead, but every silence that follows the last breath of a mortal life. Historians still argue whether that weight was a punishment or a choice, but you know the truth now, it is both, and he carries it with a grace that no thunderbolt could ever match. The soft breeze stirs the frost at your feet, and the hush seems to breathe with it a slow, patient exhale that carries the scent of cold earth and moonlit air. You stand beside Hades, your breath catching in your throat, the hush folding around you both like a soft, endless night. He turns his gaze back to the trees, the hush deepening with each step he takes toward the shadowed edge of the clearing. You follow your own steps, careful, each breath a quiet echo in the deep calm of the world. The path bends, leading you down into the hollow where the hush feels thickest, the darkness soft and endless. Hades walks with the quiet certainty of one who knows every secret the earth has ever whispered, every sorrow the night has ever cradled. In his calm you find your own, each step a small promise that there is peace even in the shadow. The moon rides high above and the hush is complete, no laughter, no thunder, only the quiet breath of the world turning beneath your feet. You see the soft gleam of tears in Hades' eyes, but he does not hide them. They are not a sign of weakness, but of the quiet strength of a god who has never turned away from the weight of the dead or the sorrow of the living. The hush holds those tears, each one a bright thread in the soft dark. You feel the calm in them, the quiet promise that even in the endless cycle of endings, there is always something that endures a breath, a memory, a single heartbeat that lingers in the hush. Hades steps forward once more, his cloak stirring the frost, and you walk beside him into the deeper dark. The world above may forget the hush, but here beneath the silver gaze of the moon, you know that every breath, every silence, every quiet ending is held and remembered. The path winds on the hush, deep and soft around you. You feel the weight of it settle into your bones, a gentle warmth in the cold night. And in that hush you walk beside Hades, each step a quiet promise that in the shadow there is always room for hope. The hush grows deeper still as the path winds downward, drawing you into the soft dark at the edge of the world. The forest parts, and before you stretches the realm of Hades, the place where the living never walk, the place where every breath finds its echo in the hush of eternity. You stand at the threshold, the air thick with the scent of earth and ancient stone. Hades pauses beside you, his gaze calm and patient, the quiet strength of centuries etched into every line of his face. The hush cradles you both, a soft, endless night that holds every secret, every prayer, every breath. Beneath the moon's pale glow, the entrance to the underworld yawns open a dark mouth in the earth that seems to breathe in the silence. The stones are cold beneath your feet, their smooth surfaces worn by the weight of countless souls who have passed this way. You feel the hush of them, the soft, patient memory of every step that has come before. Hades steps forward, his cloak a whisper of darkness that merges with the shadow at the threshold. He does not hesitate. He does not fear. This is his realm, the quiet kingdom that he rules, with the hush as his only crown. You follow each step, a soft echo in the deep calm. The hush folds around you like a promise, the air cool and heavy with the scent of still water and the breath of the dead. The world above seems impossibly far away now, the laughter and light of Olympus a memory that flickers and fades in the calm of the dark. In the hush you feel the weight of every soul that waits in the shadow, each one a single note in the quiet song that threads through the endless night. It is not a song of fear. It is a song of patience, of memory, of the quiet strength that endures when every other sound has faded. Hades walks ahead, each step sure and steady, each breath a quiet promise that the hush is not an end but a beginning. His shoulders are straight, his gaze calm, and you see the soft gleam of tears that he does not hide. They are not for himself. They are for every life that has ever breathed, every soul that has ever whispered its last prayer to the night. Historians still argue whether Hades wept for himself or for the world he carries in his patient hands. But here in the hush of the underworld you see the truth, he weeps for all of it. And in that quiet grief there is strength that no thunderbolt could ever break. The hush deepens as you step fully into the realm of the dead. The air is cool and still, the dark soft and endless. You see the faint glimmer of the rivers that wind through the shadow, Lethe Styx Acheron, each one a thread of memory, and forgetting each one a quiet promise that even in death there is something that endures. Hades pauses at the banks of the Styx, his gaze calm as he watches the dark water flow. You see the soft ache in his eyes, the quiet dignity of a god who has never turned away from the endless work of holding every soul, every prayer, every quiet breath that has ever been whispered in the hush. He kneels his hand, brushing the water's cold surface. The hush holds the moment, the world pausing to watch the quiet grief of a god who has learned that the greatest strength is not in thunder or light, but in the soft breath of the night. You stand with him in the hush, your own breath a quiet echo in the soft dark, and you understand this is the heart of Hades' realm, the place where every soul finds its echo, where every ending is held in gentle hands. The hush deepens one last time, the soft, endless calm that cradles every breath, every dream, every whispered hope. And in that hush, Hades weeps silent, patient, eternal. No one hears it but you and the endless dark that cradles every tear. The hush lingers in the soft dark of the underworld, a gentle breath that seems to cradle even your thoughts. You feel it settle into your bones, a soft weight that soothes every worry, every hurried breath of the world above. Hades stands beside you, calm and still, his tears a quiet testament to the dignity that endures in the shadow. The rivers murmur softly, their dark waters carrying every memory, every final sigh into the endless calm. In that hush you find a kind of peace you didn't know you were searching for, a slow, steady rhythm that matches the heartbeat of the earth itself. The moonlight is a distant memory now, the stars a soft glow beyond the hush. But here in the patient calm of Hades' realm, you understand the hush is not a place of fear, but a place of gentle endings. A place where every soul is held, every breath remembered, every dream laid to rest in the soft embrace of the night. You feel your breath slow, your heartbeat quiet. The world above may roar with thunder and bright light, but here in the hush, there is only the quiet strength of the god who has never turned away from the weight of every soul. Hades stands in the darkness, his shoulders straight, his eyes calm. And you, mortal and small, beneath the endless hush, feel the quiet promise he carries that even in the silence of death there is a gentle dignity that endures. So let the hush settle around you. Let the soft dark cradle your breath, your heart, your dreams. In the quiet of Hades' realm you are safe, you are remembered, and in the hush you are never truly alone.